Hey, and we are live today with Darrell Williams. He is the Chief Military Personnel Officer for DISA. Did I get that right, Darrell?
Yep, military personnel for DISA operations, correct.
All right, awesome, thanks. And I don't know, many of you may not know, but Darrell and I have chatted several times about the transition. He's very active in the transition space. But today is not supposed to be about that. Today's supposed to be about his day at work and what he does at DISA. So I guess the easiest starting point would be, what in the world is DISA?
So obviously a lot of people can look it up, but I always use the phrase when I talk to new employees in the sense that DISA is like the Comcast, Verizon Wireless for all the services, different agencies, combatant commands, and other components, wherever the DoD sees the need.
So you handle like basically the networks and communication for the entire Department of Defense?
Yep, Department of Defense, other serious agencies. I mean, the strength is so wide that it's really hard for people to understand that DISA does so much.
Mm-hmm. How big is DISA? Like approximately ballpark people?
I can't remember the last count, but just know that we are on every continent throughout the United States. I mean, the reach is very wide.
It's like you're like your own 5G network.
That's exactly true.
You're everywhere, so.
Right. You are right about that.
I honestly remember having been a member of a DISA organization, at White House Communications Agency way back in the day.
Same here.
I remember throughout my career traveling to bases and going to visit like different MI offices and stuff like that, and you'd see a DISA office just there, and you're like,
"That's correct.
Oh, there's DISA."
That's correct.
That's cool. So you guys were really busy when the pandemic hit for transitioning everybody to telework and everything else like that. Would that be a fair guess to say that happened?
That is a very fair guess, and definitely kudos to all of our leaders at that time for having the forward thinking that, they did things that allowed us to be in position, for any type of emergency such as that.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine what it takes to transition and lockdown in office, communications environment to something that's flexible enough to be out of home.
Correct.
And can go where everybody else needs. Gives them access to the information and communicate. All the collaboration. Man, it's exciting. So
it really is.
So now you're the Chief Military Personnel for Operations.
Correct.
But you're also a veteran, correct?
That is correct. 20 years in the Army.
Fantastic. Can you talk about your path from the Army, a little bit what you did in the Army up to now where you got to DISA?
Sure. So I was fortunate. I was a military human resource leader while I was in the military, which at that time was 71, then transferred over to the 42 series. And I was really fortunate. A lot of my assignment was at White House Communications Agency as well. But in that role, started off as HR, but really led to more leadership, traveling on the support teams, leading teams, making senior NCO, and then traveling on the VP side and leading the VP teams. And I was really fortunate after 9/11 to be one of the very first vice presidential communication response officers. We were the original 5 when they put that whole program together, and it's good to hear that that's still going on.
Oh yeah.
And even with that, when I got to retirement, I mean, I probably could have stayed another 4 or 5 years flying on
Mhm.
Air Force Two, but I just wanted to just see what else was out there. Who else could I help? And I just remember a lot of people saying, you're making a mistake. You shouldn't get out so quickly. You should wait it out. But I also realized, and I've always been this way, if I don't get out of the way, it doesn't make room for the next talented generation to come up and make it better. So when I got out, put in for a couple of jobs, and it was so funny. I dialed a number that I thought was at DISA, but it was not. It was actually a wrong number. They transferred me to another number, which happened to be the White House Communications Agency Training Academy, which I had no idea they even existed because we traveled
Uh-huh.
so much. And I knew the voice of the person, the old radio tech, and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like you always talk about building no relationships, trying to catch up, see how they were doing. And it wasn't until the end of the conversation where they were like, "So what were you trying to call?" And I was like, "Oh, looking at a particular program manager job," and they were like, "Oh, we have an opening here." And they already knew my background,
Yeah.
put me on the phone with the program manager. We actually interviewed right there on the phone. They hired me, and it was just amazing that I ended up working at the training academy. So that was my first transition from the military as a contractor, 4 or 5 years teaching at the training academy. And then I had a sergeant major buddy that was with DISA when they were in Courthouse Road, saying that, hey, because of BRAC, they're going to be moving to Fort Meade. I know you still live in Fort Meade. You may want to look at this opportunity. Put in for a civilian personnel job. Went to the interview, did not get the job. But the honest part was I wasn't the best fit for that job. They needed
Right.
somebody that really knew civilian personnel, knew labor laws,
Hmm.
and I was like, you know what? It would be a disservice, for me to even try to lead that type of group. And the person at the interview was like, hey, do you mind if I keep your information? I'm like, they probably all say that, right? So I'm like, sure, whatever. And a couple of months later, they told me about a military personnel opportunity as a branch chief. If I would come in to interview, I put in for it. And 10 years later, here I am.
So so first of all, I don't think people really that are listening are really understanding what you say you did in the Army.
Hmm.
They don't know this. So as a VP CRO, you were the leader of a team that
Correct.
traveled with the Vice President of the United States and made
Correct.
sure that he was always able to be contacted. All communications and direct support activities related to communications.
That is correct. It was five VPCROs, and we would always rotate along with the five military aides, as well as with the docs. And again, one of the five of us was with him 24/7.
So what's cool about that? And did you see Larry Dickerson said
I
he was a
did.
VPCRO as well? And I'll tell you,
Awesome.
they expanded a lot of the VP support people when I was at WACA.
Hmm.
Uh, a little while later, there was quite a few more VP support personnel. But how cool is that to have that for a job? Number one. Number two, I got to ask because I said to the PAG team, the Presidential Airlift Group team, I've
Hmm.
talked to them. I'm like, did you if you get a chance and you talk to the president or any of the staffers, did you mention you're getting out? And they're like, no. I'm like, what the heck? So did you ever mention to the vice president or any of the senior staffers that you were getting out?
So I did mention it to some of the senior staffers, and they were like, "So what are you going to do?" And my whole thing was, whatever it is, it's going to revolve around helping people.
Yep.
I'll use my military HR background. I'll use my leadership skills and catapult that into whatever vehicle that I use. And normally, in those type of jobs, you're professional, so they obviously let the vice president know, like, hey, we're going to let him know this is your last mission. He's going to want to talk to you once we get off the plane, and no problem. So it really wasn't until we got off the plane that I actually had a chance to really talk, not just comms, but just that
Right.
personal talk. And he was like, "So what are you going to do?" And I was like, remember telling him that it'd be something with helping people, probably HR, leadership, probably motivational speaking. And he was like, "Holy smokes, you had a lot of stuff planned." I was like, "Yes,
Did you
sir."
ever ask, do you have any advice for me?
I did not, and I think a lot of that was because I've just been so fortunate in my whole career. I have great mentors, great accountability partners that even like 3, 4 years before I even got out the military, they were already grooming me, saying, "Hey, make sure you do this, make sure you do that." And mind you, Mike, this is I mean, this is the Stone Age days, right? Before LinkedIn,
Oh
right?
yeah, I know.
So
Yep.
it was a challenge, but again, the same philosophy that you and a lot of your colleagues talk about, they were prevalent back then and they're just as prevalent as they are now.
Yeah, yeah. I like to tell people fortune favors the bold. And if you get a chance to have a genuine conversation at any point with someone that important, that connected, that engaged, it never hurts to ask for some advice. Sometimes
Absolutely.
make an introduction. The example I shared the other day with ACP connecting a service member with Rupert Murdoch as their mentor, a protege with a mentor, and Rupert Murdoch didn't have an hour to 2 hours a month to spend. I probably just had one quick chat with the person,
Right.
but then he walked out and told his EA to make sure that protege got,
Hmm.
she set up a conversation with every business unit leader and core function leader. And when she made that call and said, Rupert, wants you to talk to this person, every
Hmm.
one of them was like, how can I fit them on my team so I can say, hey, great fit. I hired him. And it worked. They got a job there, funny enough. So I like
That's
to say
true.
fortune favors the bold on that ask if you have that genuine conversation opportunity.
You're exactly right, Mike.
And so I love that. I forgot that you were at Waka Training Academy.
Hmm.
Uh, cool. I've been there a couple times. So you were training future presidential and vice presidential communications officers, right?
Correct. Correct.
And then I got to ask, do you remember who the sergeant major was that told you about the DISA job?
Yeah, it was Sergeant Major Sam Watkins.
So, yeah, I mean, you hear all the names.
Hmm.
So it's a small community. All right. So fast forward, you stop having to drive down to bowling every day from Fort Meade, which
Yep.
was brutal, I'm sure.
Hmm.
And you get this job at DISA as a branch lead, right? For in
Correct.
HR at DISA. What was that job like?
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, you're talking about the ultimate taking care of people. When I got there, I just remembered, you always had those stereotypes that a joint agency is not as good as, an actual S1 or a G1. And my goal when I got there was we would be better than any service one shop in the history of one shops. I mean, that's just how much we're going to take care of people, whether they want to get promoted, want to get out, whatever that need is, we're going to meet that need. And it was just already had a talented team there. We just had to, go into a different level. And it's just so awesome because a lot of veterans, when they get out, they kind of miss that camaraderie, especially if you go in sometimes in the private sector, it's not as much there that it is on the federal side. So for me to be on the federal side, but still working with military members, I mean, it was really the best of both worlds. So I still was doing the same things that I did as far as, evaluations, awards, manpower,
Mhm.
dealing with people who had to go on emergency leave and how to take care of them, humanitarian assignments, but it was just now we were using that broader reach of, hey, we have a unit in here, we got a unit there. If we can't get them within a DISA unit, then you know what? Let's reach out to our service brothers and sisters and find out, where is that good fit they're going to take care of them. So it's just the ultimate best job that anybody could have as it relates to taking care of people.
So you were the civilian continuity and leadership for an S1 G1 at DISA,
That
basically.
is that is correct. It's like
Oh,
DISA has its own G1, but the J3, basically for better terms, or the G3 within DISA, they're so big that
mhm.
they have their own civilian personnel team,
Mhm.
military personnel team, security team. Everything
Yep.
that big DISA has, DISA operations has that, and
Okay.
I do the military personnel piece.
Okay. So you went to that branch lead piece. That's not what
Hmm.
you're doing now, is it?
Yes, that's it.
Oh, so it's the same job. So you
Yes,
went to Waka Training Academy, and then to what you're doing now. You've been there for 10 years.
correct.
Well, that's a success story if I ever heard one.
Oh man, I love it. I love it.
Okay, so then let's talk about that. I thought there was another job after that. So another progression. So you run the military support. How big is your shop approximately?
So it's only five of us. That's what's so great about it. Five of us taking care of at least 470, active duty and so many reserve members. And it's just an awesome, awesome team with an awesome job.
And you're a GS civilian as well, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So what's your day like? Like
So
literally,
again,
what time do you start? How many meetings? Stuff like that.
so the funny part is for me, since we have organizations throughout the world, my early mornings start normally. Like I still get up military time, right? Get up at 5, you know, check my phone, and I see if there's any early emails from our DISA Europe team. Because again, I want to give them what they need. If they have a meeting at 8 o'clock my time, and I get that information at 6 my time, I want to make sure they have it way before their meeting so they can give their commander the latest update. So again, making sure DISA Europe is taken care of. And then from there, we take care of obviously Fort Meade headquarters and things of that nature. And the good thing I love about this job is there's always that day to day. There's evals that need to be reviewed, awards that need to be looked at. But then I love, especially from that walk environment, the unknown. This just dropped, right? We just lost all of our JDAL positions, and we need to turn this around in 48 hours. To me, I love those type of opportunity because it allows you. There's no rules. It's just get it done.
Right.
And to be able to take that walker mentality to my team and say, okay, let's not worry about the task at hand. What are some of the steps? What do we need to do, right? And I love, you go through the emails, you take care of those crazy last minute opportunities. Then you get back to the email. Obviously, you have the meetings, but then dealing with those challenges, like the services. In a joint agency, you don't get as much talent. You're limited as far as the billets. So
Yeah.
we get to play the game every day of, okay, how do we increase, getting our top share of talent, in this operation. So it's good to be able to go back and forth with the services and say, hey, we got a real sharp position here, Korea field office, great opportunities, da da da, and they'll say like, "Oh, we forgot about that position. We didn't know that exists. Hey, let's go back to the inventory and things of that nature." Now they have a little more streamlined system that they do with talent management, but it's still great because you still get to try to posture your positions, up there and make sure you bring in that top talent.
I remember being at DIA I was the Army element sergeant major and working, an AG or HR colonel and the rest of this largely civilian team. And we were going through the numbers and there was like 85 billets or slots, roles that hadn't been filled in over 10 years.
Right.
And I was like, all right, at what point do people realize that this is never going to get filled by the Army?
Mm-hmm.
And change that role into something else that will get filled.
Absolutely.
And how do you work through that? Because right now, X% of our workforce is not here and not ever going to be filled.
Exactly right.
So working through work, it was really interesting to work with, Army, Human Resources Command, the different proponents to say, okay, well, why is this not getting filled? Well, it's a shortage MOS, your priority. Okay, so we need this. How do we get to this?
Absolutely.
And negotiations with the services.
And it's funny you said it, Michael. That's the fun conversation that we get to have with all the different services since we're at joint agencies. And we get to go to the Air Force and, through the DISA G1 and say, hey, if we're short on 17 Deltas, what's another opportunity that we can look at to allow somebody to come in here and get this great experience? And we may end up flipping a 17 Delta composition to maybe a 16R operational type position where we can give a larger pool. And It's just fun having those conversations, going to the commanders and, hey, ma'am, hey, sir, what do you think about this? And they're like, wow, I don't know, let's try it. And then the next manning cycle, all 3 billets get filled. They're like, oh my God, these billets haven't been filled in 5 years. That's the magic of building relationships.
Yep. And not just hitting a wall and stopping.
That's right.
So, okay, These have, you got to go around the wall, through the wall, over the wall, under the wall, right? At the end of the day, there's a very relevant mission that needs to be accomplished, and they need people to do it.
That's correct.
I think that applies to just about everything, but it's exciting to see it apply to those military roles as well. So, so you start at 5 a.m. and, obviously you're not clocked in at 5 a.m. It doesn't seem like, but you have meetings all day. You've got time zones all over the world.
Correct.
When does your day end?
So normally, officially, it ends probably around 16:30, because in the government, obviously, there is a time. You can't just work people to death and things of that nature, right? So officially, it's really 16:30. But again, if there's something hot that's going on, a service member needs something, I'll get on the horn and like, hey, tell me what you need. How soon do you need it? But normally around 16:30 is when I kind of button it down officially.
Yep, but your phone's always on, and if people
always
call, sounds like you never left that behind.
I did not. It was so funny when I was talking to my wife and she was seeing me getting into the role. She was like, "You like this, don't you? This reminds you of Walker, doesn't it?" I'm like, "Well, sort of." I love taking care of people, and then again, it's great when, like I said, you get an email from DISA PAC right before they get on. Because remember, I'm dealing with Europe when I first get on, and then in the evenings before I, really, go down at the night, I'll check to see if DISA PAC needs something. So for them to get their information, what they need to brief their commander, like, holy smokes, what time is it there? Like 8:30 at night, East Coast time, and he's answering our email. But that's what happens when you build relationships. You're there for the other person.
And I think, ultimately one other thing that I'm seeing is that a lot of people that are in the more executive roles, the senior level roles, don't have traditional 9-to-5 jobs.
They do not.
And we saw that in the military, and you see that in the private sector as well. Your executive level roles are not starting at 9 and leaving at 5. I mean, everybody says balance. You got to find your own work-life balance, but that doesn't mean half and half all the time. There's usually a blend when you find something that you're truly passionate about where it doesn't seem like work. And it sounds like that's something you found.
Oh, it's definitely it. But you're right about the balance, that sometimes the people that work for you, they don't know, like, as a senior leader, okay, on these 2 days, I'm going to push hard, but Thursday, Friday, I'm going to dial it back a little bit. Sometimes the people underneath you, they don't see the dial back. So they have a tendency to pick up, attitude reflects leadership. So they have a chance to think that they need to go, go, go. So sometimes I have to tell my leader, like my team, hey, I saw you were on the email 8 o'clock at night for 2 nights in a row. Hey, don't do that to yourself. You gotta have boundaries, because I need you for the long haul.
Right. No, that's a great point. In fact, I'm actually going to go for like a 1-hour bike ride today.
Good for you, bike.
For health this afternoon while it's still nice out, because I need my sanity.
Exactly. You have to do that.
I told my whole team, go work out. So it's now live. But so we got some great questions for you, Darrell.
Okay.
We've got Cameron wants to know if you're aware of the merge of 25 Charlie to 25 Uniform. And if so, what are your thoughts on the merge?
I did hear a little bit about that from our senior Army leaders. And again, my role is, how does that fit into the agency? What positions do we have that are going to be affected? And then how do we get ahead of that curve? I try not to spend a whole lot of time of, I don't like it, don't like it. My thing is, how they're going to affect the mission. What do we need to do to get on top of it? What do we need to do to make sure we get our fair share? You always have to be a forward thinker in this role.
Yeah, I love that. So John says he's a former 10-year HRA military looking for a job. Any advice on how to get hired and networking? Great work, Darrell.
Absolutely. So obviously the biggest thing, and I tell people this all the time, get your LinkedIn account set up, connect with hiremilitary.com, Mike Quinn and all the guys, because the things that I've been saying over years, they have it in some sort of email, some sort of discussion board, and it's all there, right? So I always tell those individuals, that's definitely something you want to add to your list. But honestly, if you want to start with the networking and you want to start with the mentor,
Yeah.
There's no need for any transitioning service member to do anything in the dark, to do it alone. It's just the resources are there. So definitely network. You definitely want to talk to those mentors, get connected on LinkedIn. And what you're going to find is you're going to get more information than you can actually handle. So you're going to have a repository to save all this great information and then
Yep.
figure out where you are and how do you use that. Great example. I had a member, I think she's a logistics background, doing, I think it could be some sort of pre-transition workshop and a duty down in Huntsville. And again, like you always talk about the networking, I have a couple of friends that in Huntsville, and I was already going to send that person their resume, but I wanted to make sure, kind of cleaned it up, got rid of the military acronyms, and made it speak more to the civilian side. And it just so happened, he called me today, so we talked, caught up. He had somebody he wanted me to talk to from an HR perspective because that's how networking is. And I said, sure, I'll point him in the right position, send him the name of 3 possible mentors because I don't have to be everybody's mentor. There's so many people out there. I love spreading the wealth and
Yep.
making the connection. And by the time we finish, I'll say, oh, by the way, I have a person that's, in the Huntsville area going to be getting out in May. I wanted to clean up their resume before I sent it to you. And he was like, I know you. Just send it to me straight. Don't worry about it. And you just love making those type of connections. So I say that for the person that's transitioning, networking, getting a mentor, right? Doing your homework, getting connected on LinkedIn, all those things will lead you to success.
Yeah, and for John, I would say, just find people that you have something in common with, whether it's
Absolutely.
school, whether it's a veteran status, whether it's a previous company,
Mm-hmm.
and just reach out and ask for advice. That's it. Hey, I noticed you're successful at XYZ, or you're a successful HR leader and an Army veteran. Hey, I'm a veteran as well, and I'm looking to break into HR. You got a few
Mm-hmm.
minutes for a call or whatever, and you'll find people that say yes. And I would probably hazard to guess, John, that there is somebody on this current LinkedIn Live not named Mike Quinn that is in HR and would be happy to, if you reached out professionally, I'm pretty sure
Mm-hmm.
Darrell would make the time for a phone call at some point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because that's what it's all about. Because one thing I'm finding out, Mike, is we're building that next generation of networkers. So it's a lot of times I'll reach out to people and they're like, man, how much do I owe you? I'm like, you don't owe me anything, man. You
Right?
gave blood, sweat, and tears for our country. This is my way of giving back. So if anything, the way you pay me back is when another veteran reaches out to you in 5 or 10 years, share what you know, share the
Yep.
new things, right? And let's just keep this thing going.
Yep. Pay it forward. Absolutely. So we got another different kind of question here. I'll let you handle this one. William says, I thought the quote unquote good old boy system was going away. This whole conversation sounds as it is in full effect.
So I would say that any organization, right, however you relate it, whether the good old boy system or people that I'm comfortable with, I mean, those things exist. I mean, that's just the case. However, I would say that in any organization, you still have to bring your credentials to the table. You still have to go through the doors. Even for me, when I went to DISA, yeah, I knew of a sergeant major that told me that DISA was moving from Fort Myer to Fort Meade, but by no means did that in any way guarantee me any type of position. As a matter of fact, like I told you earlier, I had to sign up on USA Jobs just like anybody else, had to go through the interview like anybody else. And I did not get the job the first time, just like anybody else. Um, and even with that second job, my supervisor told me later on, it was out of 2 people, right?
Mhm.
We were the top 2 for the position. And she shared with me the reason she picked me over the other person, that the other person was a little bit high strung, very still hua hua, which is nothing wrong with that, but after a while you have to be able to make that transition. And the SES that we were going to support was already former Army colonel, very high speed,
Mhm.
and she thought that that person would bring another type of energy that would escalate the SES. Where when I interviewed, she thought that I would be able to bring him down. And that's always been my
Yeah.
persona, that, I'm not here to make it worse. We need to make it better. Um, yes, we'll get through all of the high, loud arguments and things like that. Okay, now once all that's out the way, now how do we get to fixing the problem?
And I would add that the whole world revolves around relationships. As far as, what we buy, who we go to for services, how we hire, everything is based on relationships and trust. And, who better to refer someone that would be a good hire into a company than somebody that is a known entity to the individuals in that company. Now, no company is just going to hire someone that's not a good fit just because they'll introduce them. What the introduction does is get your resume or your name in front of them for out of a whole bunch of hundreds of candidates, so that they actually take a look at you. And so, I have to tell everyone, if you're not making the effort to build relationships, then you're just in the masses all applying online. You got less than a 4% chance of getting an interview. So but you got to come with a resume when they are ready for a resume. You've got to come prepared for the interview when you get to the interview. And you got to understand that the companies are assessing for two things: the ability to do the job and the ability to fit, the culture fit. And that's clearly where you stood out in this interview.
And it's obvious. And the thing about networking, what people have to understand, networking only gives you an opportunity. Networking never guarantees you the job.
Yeah, no, that's and William said thank you. So here's another one. Thomas wants to know, what's the best way to gauge my market value after retirement so I don't over or undervalue myself?
That's a great question, Thomas. So there's a lot of tools out there for transitioning members. But one thing I always tell people, I find out is, first of all, where do you want to work? Do you want to work in the DC area? Do you want to work in Alabama? Do you want to work on the West Coast? Because what people don't realize is salaries are different based on locations,
Mm-hmm.
right? In the metropolitan DC area, this is a very high cost area. A lot of professionals here. So some of those type of opportunities, I always tell people, look at the salary range based on your job specialty, and you find out what are they paying in that area. For
Mm-hmm.
your job, you may be working, they may pay maybe anywhere between 95 to 115. So I always tell people, look at the range versus one actual salary. And if you're within that range, right, it's okay to market yourself for that. But
Mm-hmm.
understand, if I'm going to go for a job in Little Rock, Arkansas, asking for 115K might not work, because
Yeah.
that's just not what that area pays for my
Mm-hmm.
particular skill. Even though 20 years in the military, definitely done a lot of things, have a graduate degree, have certifications. The market really is regional specific.
Yeah. And all I would add is that, the first question I would say is, what do you want to do? Right.
Have to.
So if
What
you
do you want
know
to
what
do
your
when you grow
market
up?
value is, you got to figure out what that job is, and
Hmm.
then start researching what that job pays, uh,
Correct.
by location, by size of company, by industry, by title, by work role. And then my favorite way of helping people find their worth is to talk to people in that field.
In the
Find
industry.
mentors in that field, levels a little bit higher, hopefully, that can
Hmm.
tell you what the salary range should be, so that you could say, hey, I want to be an HR manager in tech. Well, find some people in HR and tech
Hmm.
and ask them, hey, I'm getting ready to interview, what do you think's a good pay range? What should I ask for? So I make sure that I'm getting fair value for the role and not going over or too far under. And you'll get enough answers if you put in the work and you build a network, that you'll have that tight shot group that'll keep you in that pay band.
And that is so true, because the passion that I had for training and helping people at the time that I got out, it did not pay a lot. So I always
Mm-hmm.
tell people, my story. Like when I got out, I was making way less than what I was when I was in the military. But again, I believed in myself. I knew that I was going to master this new industry. And as a contractor, I don't know if people realize it when you get ready to get out, but every year when they go over how well you've been doing, that is the time to talk about your salary. Sometimes military members don't know that. So when a person says, "Hey, Mike, you've been doing a great job. I'm hearing a lot of good things from the customer. I'm going to give you a 2% raise," and you don't know any better, and you're like, "That's great. I love that. I'm glad I'm here." But if you get more experience, like you said, networking, like, that conversation can go both ways. It's like, "Hey, I appreciate the 2% raise, but here's what I've done. Here's what I've calculated. This might seem more like a 3.5% raise, but let's talk
Right.
about that."
It's all about negotiations, and
It is.
talent is expensive for companies, and they don't want to lose high performers. So, if companies aren't willing to invest and really show that they appreciate your value, then other companies certainly will. Especially if you're active, if you're networking, those opportunities will come. And I've seen people leave EY because it would have taken too long for them to get promoted, and come back sooner at that higher level,
Mm-hmm.
because they left to get a promotion.
Sure.
So, and that happens all over the place. So that's really exciting. All right, we got one up. We'll take one more question. I think we're almost at 40 already. So,
Okay.
He says, as an HR professional with DISA, do you encounter any challenges in getting support from the directors or other leaders in the organization?
So there are some challenges, again, just like in any organization, but like as Mike said earlier, it's really all about relationships. One thing I did when I got to DISA, obviously, I made sure I knew every SES that I supported, every colonel within ops. But then I went further and said, okay, who's the money SES, right? Who's the IT SES? Who's all those guys? And I built relationships with all of those leaders. And some people were like, well, you're HR and you're military. Why are you talking to, these other organizations? I'm like, because I need to know if there's ever a situation where I need to go talk to them. I don't want that to be the first time that they met me.
Yep.
I want to build a relationship to say, hey, I got a person here. Here's the challenge. I think based on our conversation before, I think you have something of value that they probably could really learn from. Kind of set up a meeting. So yes, there's always challenges in other organizations, but I always tell people, work beyond the challenges. Don't let that be, well, okay, that person didn't meet with me, so I'll just stop. No, you continue to, try to meet them at breakfast, meet them at lunch, get on their calendar, right? And then you set the meeting, because if you are tenacious about building relationships, I'm telling you, people will gravitate to you, and then they will start using you as that connector to say, hey, I'm not good in military, but I do know a guy that's in the military called
Yep.
Darrell Williams. And that's how those relationships get stronger, because, I don't have anything to offer the person that's in the finance field. But down the road, I may get a young person who has a finance degree, but they're working a different job, but I can
Mm-hmm.
connect them with that person as a possible mentor.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Stakeholder engagement is so
Mm-hmm.
important to get anything done in the world. And I'll share one thing I did the first couple weeks that I was at EY. I got on LinkedIn and started searching for a partner at EY in the Washington, D.C. area, and connected with all the partners with a little personal note. Then I did it with principals, then I did it with managing directors, then I did it with senior managers, then I did it with some managers. So I connected with a few hundred people the first few weeks, just saying, "Hey, I'm a new senior manager at EY, and I'd love to join your professional network." And the vast majority of them accepted. And so what
Sure.
happened is every time I posted, it would be in their feed. And so people got used to seeing me post, and it put a positive impression in them, and it started making them feel like they knew me. So that I remember going to one event, and one of our most senior partners was like, "Hey, Mike, how's it going?" And I was like, "He knows me. Like,
Right.
he knows me.
Right.
Like, he said hi to me." Like,
That's huge.
and that was from building that stakeholder engagement. And I did it all through LinkedIn. And so when I would actually, reach out to have a coffee, more people would be willing to do it. And someone would reach out for help with their profiles, and I was happy to do that because paying it forward, right? Building relationships. So I love how you explain that.
It's
Well,
huge.
look, we are at 40 minutes, well, almost 20 seconds. I knew it was going to go a little long because, we've chatted a few times.
It's
But
okay.
Darrell, 2 questions. Number 1 tip for transitioning service members to find their success.
Number 1 tip, I always tell everybody, network, network, network. It's so many people, not only that have transitioned before you, they want you to succeed. They want you to, have a better experience than they had. But a lot of times, whether it's pride, whether it's, I'm an introvert or I don't know the people that might quit, don't let those, areas get in the way of your success. It's so many people that they truly, truly want you to succeed. And even the networking, just start with one person, right?
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
Yeah, I would say find your success. It doesn't have to be what your Darrell's or mine looks like.
No,
Number 1.
absolutely.
Number 2, when I started my LinkedIn journey, I didn't have any connections.
There you go.
I didn't know anybody, right? I just got on and started doing it, and it built over time. So fantastic advice. Number 2, if any transition service members, military spouses, or recent veterans, if they want to reach out to you about, careers at DISA, careers in HR, or just general advice, can they reach out via LinkedIn?
Absolutely. They can connect me with LinkedIn. Those that already know me, I'm always posting the DISA openings. I'm not the person that hires at DISA. I have to make that very clear. Military, even on the military side, there's still a system, right? But if you reach out to me, I promise I'll at least point you in the right direction.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much, Darrell. I know you've been up since 5 a.m., so that's very valuable to spend your time with us today. Appreciate everything you do, and hope to catch up again soon.
Hey, always available whenever you need me.
Appreciate you.